All right, my final story has to do with something that happened not in the last month, but something that happened 50 years ago in December of 1968. And this is the very famous Earthrise image that was taken from the Apollo 8 mission. And the astronauts returned this very iconic image of the Earth rising over the lunar horizon. And this is one that I'm sure most of you have seen. But what is amazing about this image is just the contrast of this small, fragile blue marble of the Earth floating over this very lifeless gray landscape of the moon. And so you have this amazing contrast. And once this picture became known after the astronauts landed and they had their photos returned, and it was put out to, it was announced to the public, it became sort of a landmark picture of the space age. And in many ways, it helped galvanize the environmental movement here on Earth, just because, even though we've always understood about the fact that we live on the surface of a planet that is orbiting the sun, but here you can sort of see that really viscerally, that the biosphere of the Earth is just a really thin soap bubble of air and water that hugs the surface of a rocky world that floats in this cosmic void. And so in many ways, we are all astronauts on spaceship Earth. The Apollo 8 mission was, in many ways, well, it was a precursor to the Apollo 11 landing in June of 1969, which you'll hear more about this year as we get closer to that 50th anniversary. But when this mission occurred, it was actually a very risky mission because it had been less than 2 years since the Apollo 1 fire, which killed 3 astronauts on board the command capsule. So they had to completely redesign the command capsule. And at that time, the US was still in the space race with the Soviets. And in September of 1968, the Soviets had actually sent a spacecraft around the moon where they had put on board turtles and worms. And so there was a lot of speculation that the Soviets were actually really close to sending cosmonauts on board one of their spacecraft to get to the moon. So NASA was really under duress to try and get their missions back up and running again. And so it was really only in November of 1968 that Frank Borman, the commander of this mission, agreed that he would go ahead and command the December mission. And at the time, it was the original mission was to just go once around the moon, but then they changed it so that they would go into an orbit that would allow them to orbit the moon multiple times, so that it could photograph the surface for the Apollo 11 landing. And this was a success. And what's really interesting is that we've forgotten a lot about this particular mission, but one of the main legacies of Apollo 8 is this photograph. And even though they were sent to explore the moon, the amazing thing that came back out of this was the astronauts, as well as Earthlings here on Earth, got to rediscover our own world. So with that, I want to end my portion of the talk with a video that the NASA Science Visualization Studio put together last month about how they used more recent images from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter to sort of figure out exactly how this photograph came about.
On December 24, 1968, Apollo 8 astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders became the first humans to orbit the moon and the first to witness the magnificent sight called Earthrise. Now we can see this historic event exactly as the astronauts saw it, thanks to data from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO. LRO's superb global lunar maps, combined with the astronauts' own photographs, reveal where Apollo 8 was over the moon, and even its precise orientation in space, when the astronauts first saw the Earth rising above the moon's barren horizon. It happened a few minutes after 10:30 a.m. Houston time, as Apollo 8 was coming around from the far side of the moon for the 4th time. Mission Commander Frank Borman was in the left-hand seat, preparing to turn the spacecraft to a new orientation according to the flight plan. Navigator Jim Lovell was in the spacecraft's lower equipment bay, about to make sightings on lunar landmarks with the onboard sextant. And Bill Anders was in the right-hand seat, observing the moon through his side window and taking pictures with a Hasselblad still camera fitted with a 250mm telephoto lens. Meanwhile, a second Hasselblad with an 80mm lens was mounted in Borman's front-facing window, the so-called rendezvous window, photographing the moon on an automatic timer, a new picture every 20 seconds. These photographs, matched with LRO's high-resolution terrain maps, show that Borman was still turning Apollo 8 when the Earth appeared. It was only because of the timing of this rotation that the Earthrise, which had happened on Apollo 8's 3 previous orbits but was unseen by the astronauts, now came into view in Bill Anders' side window. Here's what it looked like, as recreated from LRO data by Goddard's Scientific Visualization Studio. You'll hear the astronauts' voices as captured by Apollo 8's onboard tape recorder, beginning with Frank Borman announcing the start of the roll maneuver. And you'll see the rising Earth move from one window to another as Apollo 8 turns.
All right, we're going to roll. Ready? Set. The impact crater with at just prior to the subsolar point on the south side, and the floor of it nearly even, except there is one dark hole, but I couldn't get a quick enough look at it to see if it might be anything volcanic. Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, is that pretty. Hey, don't take that, it's not scheduled. You got a color film, Jim? Hand me a roll of color quick, will you?
Man, that's great. Where is it?
Quick.
Down here?
Just grab me a color. A color exterior.
There you go.
Got one?
Yeah, I'm looking for one. C368.
Anything, quick.
Here.
Okay. We missed it.
Hey, I got it right here.
Let me get up this a lot clearer.
Bill, I got it framed. It's very clear right here. Got it?
Yep. Just take several.
Take several of them. Here, give it to me.
Wait a minute, let me just get the right setting here. Now, just calm down, Lovell.
Oh, I got it right. Oh, that's a beautiful shot. 250 at F11. Now there's the explosion.
I did. I took two up there.
You sure you got it now?
Yeah, it'll come up again, I think.
For the astronauts, seeing the Earthrise was an unexpected and electrifying experience. And one of the 3 photographs taken by Bill Anders became an iconic image of the 20th century. In 2018, the International Astronomical Union commemorated the event by naming a 25-mile diameter crater Anders Earthrise. A smaller crater was given the name 8 Homeward. Both craters are visible in the iconic Earthrise photograph. I'm Andrew Chaikin, author of A Man on the Moon.